working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. And we're coming to you live from Manila and Jakarta, Indonesia. Hello, December.
Hello, Alma. Hello to all the televiewers. I'm December Paras of EBC Indonesia Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. President Duterte assured the families of soldiers killed and injured in the recent Philippine Air Force C-130 plane crash that their sacrifices will not go in vain.
The factory explosion in Bangkok, Thailand has forced thousands of people to evacuate their homes.
Philippine security forces search among coconut trees on a remote southern island for the flight data boxes of an aircraft that crashed and killed 52 people in one of the country's worst military air disasters.
The government is ready to provide assistance to the family of 69-year-old Volcano, who was among the casualties in the collapse of a condominium in Florida on June 24.
President Duterte on Monday assured the families of soldiers killed and injured in the recent Philippine Air Force C-130 plane crash that their sacrifices will not go in vain. The president made this assurance during his visit to the AFP Western Mindanao Command, or West MINCOM, gymnasium in Zamboanga City to honor casualties in the military plane crash in Paticol, Sulu. Let's listen in.
More than anybody else, o kasing pareho tayo, the life of a soldier is always valuable, whether in the fields of fighting or events such as this. They died for our country. And for that, I am very grateful to those who died and those who suffered and are still suffering now. Gusto ko lang malaman ninyo that we will extend all help. At yung ibang medyo na yung extremities nila, that they will have the same prosthesis and all. But burns is a long process to heal. Ako, wala akong masabi na pareho tayong lahat ay nagdudusa. Kaya lang, the best that we can really do, and the most important thing is that itong namatay, that they shall not have died in vain. They died for our country, and it behooves upon us to continue the help, and they were alive as they are now in heaven.
Meanwhile, the president also visited the Camp Navarro General Hospital, also in Zamboanga City, to award the Order of Lapu-Lapu with the rank of Kampilan to the injured soldiers. He later proceeded to the Naval Forces for Western Command, or Western Mindanao, to lead the symbolic conferment of the Order of Lapu-Lapu with the rank of Kalasag to the fallen soldiers by virtue of Executive Order number 35 signed on the 28th of July 2017. The Order of Lapu-Lapu, Kampilan, and Kalasag medals are awarded to officials and personnel of the government, as well as private individuals who were seriously wounded or suffered great loss of property, and to those who lost their lives in the pursuit of the president's campaign or advocacy. Reports from the AFP show that C-130 plane carrying nearly 100 passengers was set to transport troops from Cagayan de Oro City to Sulu when the pilots failed to regain power and missed the runway.
Philippine security forces searched among coconut trees on a remote southern island on Monday for the flight data boxes of an aircraft that crashed and killed 52 people in one of the country's worst military air disasters. Armed Forces of the Philippines spokesperson said it mourns deeply the tragedy that killed 47 soldiers, most of them just graduated from military training. Take a look.
First, I'd like to tell you that the AFP mourns deeply the incident that took the lives of 47 of our soldiers, most of them fresh graduates from military training and supposed to be deployed to the 11th Infantry Division based in Sulu that runs after and combats the terrorist Abu Sayyaf group in this part of the region. All the remains of the 47 soldiers who perished have all been recovered, and the tedious process of identification is now ongoing. The other 49 survivors have all been brought to different hospitals. As of now, the investigating team has already arrived in the area to conduct its own investigation. They could have arrived last night, but due to the absence of running lights in Sulu, their trip was rescheduled until early this very morning.
Yung bumagsak yung plane, nandito kayo sa site that time, kahapon?
Oo, doon lang sa bahay namin.
Nakita mo yung plane?
Oo, yung unang bumagsak yung na sagasaan nila yung bahay namin.
The C-130 Hercules transport plane was carrying 96 people, most of them recent Army graduates, when it overshot the runway on Sunday while trying to land on Jolo Island in Sulu Province, a haven for Islamist militants. The plane speeded and burst into flames in a village, killing 52 people, including 49 military personnel and 3 civilians, said military spokesperson Major General Edgar Arevalo. Another 51 were injured, most of them soldiers. It was not clear if the pilots were among the survivors. This is one of the worst tragic incidents that happened in our armed forces, Arevalo said. The 3 civilians killed were not on the flight and had been working in a Pari village leader Tanda Haili, told AFP. They were relatives of Aga Ahadi, who was lucky to survive the crash. He and his child were outside when the plane flowed through their house and then a neighbor's home. Arevalo said the military had secured the crash site and would ensure militants on the island do not disrupt search efforts. Dental records were being used to help identify the charred remains of victims. Most of the passengers recently graduated from basic military training and were being deployed to the restive island as part of a counterinsurgency effort in the Muslim-majority region. The military has a heavy presence in the southern Philippines, where militant groups, including the kidnap or ransom outfit Abu Sayyaf, operate.
In other news, the number of families affected by the continued unrest of the Taal volcano has now reached 1,902. That according to the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, reporting this today. Now, in its 8 a.m. update, the agency also said this is equivalent to 6,585 individuals residing in 77 barangays in Region 4A or Calabarzon. The majority of the affected families came from the towns of Taal Lemery, Agoncillo, Balete, Cuenca, Talisay, Tanawan, Laurel, Mataas na Kahoy, and San Nicolas, all in Batangas. The NDRRMC said 1,044 families are staying in 23 evacuation centers, while the rest are now staying outside with their relatives. Some 1.8 million pesos worth of food packs and other relief items have already been extended to the affected individuals. Taal Volcano has been under alert level 3, which is magmatic unrest following a phreatomagmatic eruption, a result of the interaction between magma and water that occurred at its main crater on July 1st. The volcano's sulfur dioxide, or SO2 gas emissions on Sunday were anomalously high at 22,628 tons, the highest it ever recorded, according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. Current SO2 parameters indicate ongoing magmatic extrusion at the main crater that may further drive succeeding explosions.
The government is ready to provide assistance to the family of a 69-year-old Filipina who was among the casualties in the collapse of a condominium in Florida on June 24. Department of Labor and Employment spokesperson Rolly Francis said the Philippine Overseas Labor Office in Los Angeles, California is ready to extend assistance to the family of Maricoy Obias Bonifoy. He said the Filipino victim has no record with the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA. Francis said the DOLE expressed sympathy to the family of the victim. Aside from the Filipina, her 75-year-old husband, Claudio, also died in the accident. Hundreds are still missing, while 22 were reported killed after a building in a Surfside town partially collapsed last week. An investigation is being conducted as to what caused some 55 of the building's 136 units to collapse.
A factory explosion in Bangkok, Thailand has forced thousands of people to evacuate their homes. Giving us an update on that, here is Veronica Carino as we follow this developing story. Hello, Veronica.
Good afternoon, Alma.
Good afternoon.
Yes, an explosion near Thai capital Bangkok's international airport Monday left a plastic factory in flames, killing at least one firefighter and wounding 29 people. Another 12 volunteer firefighters and 33 other people were injured. The blast occurred around 3 a.m. at Taiwan-based Mingdi Chemical Corporation, located on the outskirts of Bangkok near Suvarnabhumi Airport. By noon, 500 residents near the area were moved to 2 shelters, including a nearby school about 9 kilometers away. Rescue workers drove around surrounding neighborhoods in emergency vans, telling thousands of residents via loudspeakers to leave for their safety. The public have been ordered to stay away from a radius of at least 5 meters around the blast site, according to Lieutenant General Ampon Barapon. The cause of the explosion is still unknown. Volunteer rescue worker Anyawut Pompai told Thailand public TV station TPBS that early attempts to find people possibly still in the factory were hampered by the huge flames. According to officials, Mingdi Chemical Corporation produces expanded polystyrene, colloquially known as styrofoam, and has been in operation since 1985 in Bangpli district. Besides being the site of Suvarnabhumi Airport, which saw massive black clouds above its airport runways Monday, the 500-meter radius around the factory is also home to some 300 factories and residential neighborhoods, housing 240 communities. Traffic around the area was thrown into chaos as authorities closed a main road running parallel to the airport, while strong fumes of burning plastics permeated the area. Local disaster authorities said 70 houses were damaged. The cause of the blast had yet to be determined. The Mingdi factory is located about 4.8 kilometers or 2.98 miles from Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi Airport. The airport said flights and its operations were not affected by the blast. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Veronica, for that update. Looking forward to more updates as we follow this developing story from Bangkok. Please keep safe.
Yes, Alma, and keep safe also. Reporting live from Thailand, this is Veronica Carino, and we live in interesting times.
Australian spy series Pine Gap has been pulled from Netflix Vietnam. The decision came after the Southeast Asian country expressed anger over the show's depiction of a map of the South China Sea. Micah Gwyneth Apostol reports from EBC Vietnam. Hello, Micah.
Hello, December. Here's the latest news from Vietnam. Netflix pulled an Australian spy show from its services in Vietnam over scenes containing a map of the South China Sea showing Beijing's claims in the Flash waterway. The map, shown briefly in 2 episodes of Pine Gap, had prompted a complaint from the Southeast Asian country's broadcasting authority. Vietnam's Authority of Broadcasting and Electronic Information said on its website that the images shown during the 6-episode drama had violated the country's sovereignty over sea and islands. It also said that Netflix violations have hurt feelings and caused outrage among the entire Vietnamese people. The statement also said this was the 3rd time over the past 12 months that Netflix had been found to distribute movies and TV shows containing content which violates Vietnam's sovereignty. It singled out Chinese rom-com Put Your Head on My Shoulder and the political drama Madam Secretary. Netflix confirmed that Pine Gap, which is described as an international political thriller set around the Australian and American Joint Defence Intelligence Facility at Pine Gap in Australia's Northern Territory, had been removed in Vietnam. Netflix said, following a written legal demand from the Vietnamese regulator, we have removed the licensed series Pine Gap from Netflix in Vietnam to comply with local law. It added, it remains available on our service in the rest of the world. China has long used its so-called 9-dash line to justify its claims over most of the resource-rich South China Sea, often to the displeasure of Vietnam, which also claims parts of the waterway. In October 2019, Vietnamese authorities pulled the animated film Abominable, a joint production by DreamWorks and China's Pearl Studio, from cinemas over a scene featuring a similar map showing the 9-dash line. In 2018, romantic comedy Crazy Rich Asians, one of the scenes cut from screening in Vietnam, featured the designer bag with a map of the world showing disputed South China Sea islands under Beijing's control. Back to you, December.
Thank you, Micah, for that update, and please stay safe.
Thank you so much, December. Reporting live from Da Nang, Vietnam, this is Micah Gwyneth Apostol. We live in interesting times.
And staying in Vietnam, from August 14 this year, citizens can choose to apply for passports with or without electronic chip, according to Circular 73-2021, TTBCA of the Ministry of Public Security on passport specimens. An electronic chip stores the holder's personal information, fingerprint scans, identification photo, and a digital signature from the issuing agency. The chip is attached to the back cover of the passport. Languages used in the passport include Vietnamese and English. The circular also stipulates that diplomatic passports have a sepia cover. The official passport has a dark green cover, and the cover page of the ordinary passport is purple blue. Previously issued passports are still valid until the date of expiration, which are printed on the passports. Earlier, the law on exit and entry of Vietnamese citizens takes effect on July 1, 2020, stipulating two types of passports, with and without electronic chips. Citizens who are at least 14 years old are eligible to apply for a passport with or without the electronic chip. The passports are valid for 10 years.
The Department of Foreign Affairs on Monday has opened several temporary off-site passport or passport service sites to help address the current backlog and satisfy the country's increasing demand for passport processing. In a virtual briefing, DFA Undersecretary Brigido Dulay said these stop sites are already in operation and are located at SM Mall of Asia, SM City North EDSA, SM Aura, Robinson's Place, Las Piñas, and Robinson's Place, Magnolia. In total, he said these temporary sites are expected to add an additional 177,000 passport application slots until September, each able to process 500 appointments daily. He said there are plans to open more sites outside Metro Manila in Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal. For senior citizens, pregnant women, overseas Filipino workers, solo parents, or persons with disabilities who need assistance in the processing of their passports. He said all top sites as well as other consular sites are open for a personal visit. He noted that they may also send their request through an email at oca.cl@dfa.gov.ph. He also warned the public against scammers who offer passport application slots online for a price, especially on social media. He noted that the DFA has requested the assistance of the cybercrime unit of the Philippine National Police and the National Bureau of Investigation to investigate these illegal activities.
To Malaysia now, where the parliament will sit this month after being suspended in January under a coronavirus emergency, according to the government, following criticism the embattled premier was using the crisis to cling to power. Now, the king declared a nationwide state of emergency at the start of the year on the advice of Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin to fight an escalating COVID-19 outbreak. Parliament was suspended at the same time, leading critics to charge Muhyiddin, who took office last year, was using the emergency to shore up his weak coalition and avoid a no-confidence vote. But anger mounted sharply, and even the king himself recently called for the legislature to reconvene before the emergency officially ends in August to debate the government's pandemic response. The Prime Minister's office said in a statement, the government had agreed to a 5-day sitting of the lower house of parliament from July 26. The sitting will center on the government's recovery plans and changes on how future parliament sessions can be held during the pandemic. The upper house will also sit for several days. Parliament's last session, during which Muhyiddin's government narrowly managed to pass its budget, ended in December. James Chin, a Malaysia expert from the University of Tasmania, said opposition lawmakers would use the session to embarrass the government as much as possible over the pandemic, but predicted it would not lead to a change of government. Muhyiddin seized power in March last year without an election after the collapse of a reformist government led by veteran politician Mahathir Mohamad, who's 95 years old. Malaysia's outbreak has been gradually worsening in recent months. Total cases now stand at over 700,000 and over 5,400 deaths. And the whole country was placed under a tough lockdown at the start of June. And ASEAN in Focus will be right back. Please stay tuned.
factual,
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
timely information, balanced, not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Agila Pilipinas! A one-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Agila Probinsya.
Sa mga taga-Iloilo at Antique.
Tune into Mata ng Agila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Agila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to explain our health outdoor attack.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
And we're back for latest news in Indonesia. Indonesia on Monday called for the nation's oxygen supplies to be sent to hospitals overflowing with coronavirus patients as fresh cases and deaths hit new records.
Kesulitan rumah sakit juga, akhirnya isolasi mandiri di rumah dan membutuhkan oksigen juga, makanya kita sedang mencari oksigen gitu Pak.
Berapa hari mencari?
Sini kurang lebih 3 harian sini udah mencari oksigen. Ya.
Belum dapat sama sekali?
Belum. Hari ini kita lagi coba lagi untuk menteri. Mudah-mudahan hari ini dapat.
Oxygen producers had been told to allocate their stocks to the medical sector as the country is battered by an unprecedented wave of infections driven by the highly contagious Delta variant. It was said by Senior Minister Luhut Binsar Panjaitan, apart from hospitals, the steel and mining industries are major buyers of mineral-rich Indonesia's oxygen supply. An emergency refueling station was set up in central Jakarta, while rickshaw drivers in the city of Bandung delivered tanks to homes where virus patients were isolating. On Monday, the country reported 29,745 new infections and 558 deaths, both daily records after the government last week ordered fresh virus curves in the hard-hit capital Jakarta across Java on Holiday Island Bali. Mosques, parks, shopping malls, and restaurants were shut in hotspot areas, while non-essential employees were ordered to work from home. Dozens in Jakarta were arrested Monday for operating cafes and entertainment venues in violation of the new rules. In Java's Semarang City, authorities sprayed water hoses at street-side restaurants, still serving customers. The world's fourth most populous nation has seen its daily caseload more than quadruple in less than a month, and its tally stands at 2.3 million cases and 61,140 deaths. But that figure is widely believed to be a severe undercount due to low testing and poor tracing measures.
Diversified conglomerate Gokongwei Group is playing a proactive role in the government's initiatives against the coronavirus disease pandemic, particularly in line with disease prevention and achieving population protection target through vaccination. Beyond our organization, we have been supporting the national vaccination program through various initiatives of our business units in partnership with the LGUs or local government units. The Gokongwei Group fully supports the national government's vaccination program to safeguard the health of the Filipinos and hasten the nation's economic recovery from this pandemic. This is according to JG Summit President and Chief Executive Officer Lance Gokongwei in a statement on Monday. The Department of Health recently announced that the government vaccination drive has already reached the 10 million mark, with more than 2 million Filipinos already considered fully protected with complete COVID vaccination. To date, Cebu Pacific has already transported some 9 million COVID vaccine doses from China to Manila as part of the government's vaccination program. With its widest domestic network in the country covering 32 destinations, the airline has already ferried more than 1.8 million vaccine doses distributed to various cities, municipalities and provinces such as Bacolod, Butuan, Cagayan de Oro, Cotabato, Davao, Legazpi, Masbate, Puerto Princesa, Tacloban, Tuguegarao, Virac, Zamboanga, and Dipolog, among others. Likewise, Cebu Pacific has supported the city of Manila for its delivery of 400,000 doses of Sinovac vaccines from China after having been allowed by the national government as the sole LGU authorized to procure directly from Beijing.
StarPay, one of the financial service providers, or FSPS, of the Social Amelioration Program SAP, distributed cash aid to beneficiaries not only through its app but via other conduits as well. Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD Secretary Rolando Bautista, explained in the virtual House briefing on Monday that it is one of the reasons why there were only 500,000 downloads as against 1.8 million beneficiaries, as alleged by Senator Manny Pacquiao. The champion boxer said on Saturday that DSWD must account for missing SAP funds. Take a look.
SST ay natukoy sa pamamagitan ng technical assistance ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas na siyang pinansyal na polisiya at regulasyon tungkol sa pananalapi. Sa pagtukoy sa mga FSPs, ipiniliwanag ng BSP, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, na ang pangunahing mga konsiderasyon ay ang pagkakaroon ng balanse sa kakayahan ng mga FSP na mag-cash out. Karagdagang dito ay ang pagkakaroon ng business model institution, karanasan ng commercial rollout, at uri ng cash out points na makakatulong sa pagtitiyak ng liquidity o pagkakaroon ng sapat na pera. Ang lahat ng prospective FSPs kasama ang StarPay ay pinadalhan ng imbitasyon upang makasali sa selection process. Sila din ay pinagsubmit ng proposal na kani-kanilang iprinisinta sa isang pagpupulong kasama ang DSWD, DICT at Bangko Sentral. Mula sa kanilang presentasyon ay nagbigay ng rekomendasyon ang Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas para mabuo ang tinatawag nating terms of reference. Kaya masasabi natin na anim actually na financial service providers ang napili. At sabi nga namin, sa simula ng proseso ng pagpili hanggang sa ongoing na implementasyon ng SAP-2 digital payments ay katuwang namin ang Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Kaya yung profile ng mga financial service providers, I believe that nakapasa sila.
Bautista also said he would like to know the source of the data of Pacquiao, who left for the United States hours after his supposed tell-all press briefing. DSWD spokesperson Irene Dumlao told Philippine news agency that Pacquiao's office has not reached out to them to access their data or transparency report on the implementation staff. The DSWD is also waiting for an invitation to attend hearings on or inquiries on the missing fund accusations.
In the related news, Malacanang on Monday dismissed as trivial Senator Manny Pacquiao's claim that there are at least 4 government agencies, namely the Departments of Social Welfare, Health, Energy, and Environment, involved in corrupt practices. In a palace press briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque compared Pacquiao's allegations to a Watusi, or the dancing firecracker ignited through friction or scratching on a hard surface. Take a look.
Watusi po. Akala ko atom bomb, yung pala Watusi. Wala po, walang kwenta. Kasi puro generalized allegations po. Walang bill of particulars, walang specific instance, walang ebidensya. Wala man lang follow-up dahil gaya nga po sinabi ni Senator Gordon, paano naman yan? Magpapaimbestiga siya sa Senado pero wala yung proponent. Sino magtatanong? Hindi po ganyan ang trabaho ng Senado. Dapat po ayusin muna ang trabaho niya bilang isang senador, patunayan ang kanyang mga paratang dahil kung hindi po, politika lang po talaga ang mga pinagsasabi ni Senator Pacquiao.
Sa tingin nyo, kailangan pang maimbestigahan ang mga aligasyon ni Senator Pacquiao sa Senate Blue Ribbon Committee?
Kay Senator Pacquiao po yan dahil kabahagian ng kanyang responsibilidad bilang senador pero hindi naman niya magagampan dahil umalis siya ng bansa. Absent. Hindi ko po alam kung ano pa ang pag-uusapan nila ni Presidente. Nauna na po siyang nagbitaw ng mga salita sa media. So kung talagang gusto niyang makipag-usap kay Presidente, dapat hindi muna niya inuna ang media.
Secretary said the decision on whether or not to proceed with the proposal for the Blue Ribbon Committee to investigate corruption allegations would depend on Senator Pacquiao. He renewed his call for Senator Pacquiao to submit evidence that would prove his allegations if he was really sincere in trying to help rid the government of corruption.
The Department of Education on Monday demanded a public apology from World Bank following its report that over 80% of Filipino students fall below the minimum proficiency levels. In a palace briefing, Education Secretary Leonor Briones slammed the World Bank for using old data and outdated assessments as the basis of its report and releasing it without following the country's protocols. The report was based on 3 assessments. The Philippines participated the Program for International Students, or PISA, in 2018, the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Studies, or TIMSS, in 2019, and the first cycle of Southeast Asia Primary Learning Metrics, or CTLM, in 2019. The World Bank said there is a crisis in Philippine education which started pre-COVID-19. And it has been made worse by the coronavirus pandemic. Let's listen.
Maraming salamat, Spokes Harry. 3 pundo lamang na maiikli. Una, yung datos, inaamin ito ng World Bank na ginamit nila ay galing sa PISA assessment. At yung PISA assessment na data, noong 2019 pa, diniscuss na yun ng buong Pilipinas. So luma na yung data nila dahil since 2019, marami nang nangyayari. Pangalawa, lahat ng mga sektor ng ating society, tumutulong na ang gobyerno, ibang departamento, mga bilaterals, multilaterals, private citizens, tumutulong dahil sa paglabas ng data na ito na luma, na binuhay ulit kasama sa dalawa pang exams. At sinabi na, in-explain naman namin na hindi desisyon yan ng Department of Education sa ngayon na sumali doon sa assessment na yan. Pangalawang punto na gusto kong i-emphasize, ang World Bank na nagpalabas nitong datos na ito, hindi sumusunod sa protocol. Kasi kung mag-report ka about a country, kailangan malaman ng country na yon kung anong sasabihin ninyo, kailangan nila ipalabas. Walang kasabi-sabi, inunas ng media. So malaking kakulangan ito. Pangatlo, na gusto kong i-emphasize, matagal na partner ang World Bank sa ating reform sa education. Nakautang na tayo since 1981. In 1981, nag-utang tayo ng $100 million from World Bank for Education. Tapos 1997, nag-utang tayo ng $113,000 million. Pagkatapos, may nakasunod pa na $200 million. Umabot ng $300 million ang nautang na natin sa World Bank since 1980. So talagang matagal na partner na ang World Bank tungkol sa edukasyon. At hindi lang yung partnership, utang relationship yan. At present, mayroong under negotiation na 2 loans sa World Bank na hindi pa nabuo sa aking administrasyon. Ay ito yung $110 million para sa mag-enhance ng capacity ng teachers. At yung pangalawa, yung alternative learning systems na $100 million din. So hindi natin masasabi na kung may pagkukulang sa edukasyon sa Pilipinas, gawa-gawa lang ito ng Pilipinas. Ito ay nag-i-involve ng mga partners. Ang isa sa pinakamalaki since 1981 na umabot $700 million ang nautang natin at binabayaran natin ngayon ay sa World Bank. Ngayon, under negotiation, ulitin ko, $110 million for upgrading our teachers and for strengthening us ay $100 million. Pero ito, hindi pa ito na buo. So pangalawa yan. Kaya ang sabi nga namin na siguro dahil sa 3 kakulangang ito na nalagay sa hindi magandang una, lumang datos na alam na ng lahat, alam na ng congressman, alam na ng lahat ng critics ng education dahil nalabas na ito. Pangalawa, walang excuse me. Hindi namin alam. Ang practice is ipaalam mo sa isang bansa kung pagpadala ka ng report ng ganyan sa publiko. Nauna ang media. Pangatlo, hindi sinama yung mga bagong developments na ang daming tumutulong ngayon dahil concerned ang buong bansa sa estado ng edukasyon. And finally, matagal na partner na ang World Bank since 1981. Marami na tayong inutang sa World Bank para mag-improve sa edukasyon. So, partner sila, kasali sila dito sa sitwasyon sa world, sa Pilipinas. At saka ngayon, we are winding up negotiations na hindi pa na pirmahan ng Secretary of Education itong $110 million at $100 million na uutangin ulit sa World Bank. So, we would like the public to be aware of this. And since the country was insulted, was shamed, and so on, we expect and look forward to a public apology. Lalo na yung pagsabi sa amin na naglabas sila ng ganong klaseng datos na lumang-luma na datos.
And the news continues in Asean in Focus after the short break.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Samahan sina Wedge Kujamat,
itong balitang panggising sa ulo ng mga balita.
Apple David,
Sa 60 katao ang isinugod sa ospital.
Phoebe Publico
Economic sabotage ang mga tiwaling negosyante.
at Cristel Fesalbon
Pagpresyo ng gulay, makakausap natin
para iatid sa inyo ang mga kaganapan at pangyayari sa bansa at sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Mga napapanahong isyu ng bayan. May balitang sports, entertainment at iba pang kaalaman. Simula Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 5 ng umaga sa paborito nyong morning show, Pambansang Almusal, dito sa Net 25.
Pambansang Almusal.
Events happen around us all the time. In our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back. Demonstrating the effectiveness of policies and not just enactment of laws that fight money laundering and terrorist financing. That is needed for the Philippines to be removed from the gray list of the Financing Action Task Force, or FATF. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Benjamin Diokno, in a virtual briefing on Thursday, said that the country was able to address the technical deficiencies cited under the third mutual evaluation by international money laundering authorities. This after the passage of the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020, or the Republic Act 11479 and RA 11521, which further amends the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2001. Let's listen in.
As such, the inclusion of the Philippines in the list of jurisdictions under increased monitoring, or the gray list, did not automatically mean the imposition of countermeasures, including the application of enhanced due diligence measures on the subjects of the Philippines. However, should the Philippines fail to meet the deadlines in accomplishing the 18 action items, the FATF may consider calling on countries to impose countermeasures against the Philippines. Let me make this very clear. Accomplishing these 18 action items should be the concern of the entire country. A whole-of-government approach is imperative, as evident in the Philippines' National Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism, AML-CFT strategy for 2018 to 2022, or what we call NACS. Created through Executive Order Number 68, the National AML-CFT Coordinating Committee, or NACC, champions the implementation of the NACS. The NACC subcommittees, which are composed of various agencies, government law enforcement agencies, are the primary implementers of the NA, or the NACS action plans, which are currently being updated to integrate the 18 action plan items. Let me assure you that the NACC is on top of the situation. Even prior to the FATF statement on the Philippines, the NACC met and all agencies involved have committed to accomplishing the 18 action items within the timelines given.
The recent inclusion of the Philippines in the gray list is not the first time for the country after 2000 or prior to the enactment of the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2001 or AMLA. The country was removed from the list only in 2003 after the Asia-Pacific Group on Money Laundering or APG review group confirmed that the country was effectively implementing AML measures and after the enactment of RA 9194, which amended the AMLA. However, it was again placed on the gray list in 2010 and was even downgraded to dark gray list in 2012 for failure to meet the deadline for addressing counterterrorism financing laws. The country was transferred back to the gray list only after the passage of the RA 10167 and the Terrorism Financing Prevention and Suppression Act of 2012.
Now, despite fresh COVID-19 outbreak, Vietnam's economy grew 5.46% in the first 6 months of 2021, much higher than 1.82% rate reported for the same period last year, largely driven by the industry and construction sector. Gross domestic product surged 6.61% in the second quarter compared to a year earlier and 4.65% in the first quarter, the General Statistics Office announced on June 29. The first half growth, however, is lower than 5.8% forecast for the period by the Ministry of Planning and Investment late this May. The ministry estimated a full-year growth of 6%. The General Statistics Office said the pandemic started to break out late this April in different cities and provinces with complicated and unpredictable developments, causing many challenges and risks as the country sought to curb the pandemic and sustain economic growth. For January to June, the agriculture, forestry, and fishery sector increased by 3.82%, while the industry and construction sector and the service sector expanded 8.36 and 3.96 respectively. Vietnam's export rose 24.5, while imports went up 22.76 during the period. Late this June, Singapore-based United Overseas Bank forecast the Vietnamese economy would expand 6.7 this year, much higher than the latest prediction of 6% by the Ministry of Planning and Investment.
Many small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, the backbone of Thailand's economy, are struggling with crushing debt loads that could force them out of business as the latest wave of COVID infections dims the prospect for an economic recovery. This round is much worse than last year, and millions of operations are suffering, according to Mr. Sangchai Thirakulwanich, chairman of the Federation of Thai SME, who submitted a proposal last month for the government to boost support to smaller businesses. He said if the situation is prolonged to the end of the year, the nation will be in crisis, with 80% of us going bankrupt. Thailand's SMEs, many of them concentrated in the tourism industry, have been hit especially hard since the country closed its borders last year, sending the economy to its deepest contraction in more than 2 decades. The situation has worsened with daily cases and deaths at record levels, leading the government to impose fresh restrictions in late June. The Bank of Thailand has called repeatedly to boost liquidity to SMEs, which are seen as crucial to any economic recovery. Thailand had 3.1 million SMEs as of last year, employing 12.7 million people, according to government data. The Thai Chamber of Commerce believes the real number of SMEs could be as much as 1 million, as many smaller operators do not register with the authorities.
He's the second resident of the Asean Artist Residency program and see the world through the eyes of a talented wanderer, Ha Ninh Pham. Let's watch this.
In 2018, the ASEAN Secretariat launched the ASEAN Artists Residency Program, or AARP, to support artists across all 10 ASEAN member states. The program kick-started with an exhibition at the ASEAN Gallery by Antang Waharso, one of Indonesia's leading contemporary artists. In 2019, the Thai Beverage Public Company Limited, or Thai Bev, one of Southeast Asia's largest beverage companies, came on board to support the AARP. Thai Bev is renowned for its generous and long-standing commitment to arts patronage. After an open call and selection process, Panafan Yodmani from Thailand was chosen as the inaugural resident artist, also in 2019. In 2020, Ha Ninh Pham from Vietnam was selected to represent his nation for the AARP. When he was selected, he had recently returned to his home city of Hanoi after completing his studies at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in the United States of America. We caught up with him in his studio in Hanoi to discuss his current research interests, how he is coping during the COVID-19 pandemic, and his hopes for the future.
My studio is next to one of the bridges that cross the Red River. As you know, like Hanoi has a big river that's called the Red River near to the downtown area of the city. There is the energy of young people who are trying to start. And if you see in a lot of businesses, a lot of industries, people are starting to do something, maybe a website, maybe a restaurant, a coffee shop, or in my case, I have my studio. I come to my studio every day and work hard to make my dream real. My research on ASEAN so far has been more about the history of how the languages have been changed in Vietnam as well as in many other ASEAN countries. It's interesting because I can see from it the vision and the mindset are changed accordingly to the change of language. I started to think more about bodies, more like organic. I got a little bit of depression and I just couldn't work really intellectually. It's easier for me to just let the thoughts and the organic feeling out on the drawing without thinking too much of it. And the project started to become more organic. It really affects the way we think about our importance in a society. I'm teaching in a art design school. I think that as an artist and a teacher, we cannot change everything out there, but at the same time, we can change something small. So there's an old saying in Vietnam that you have to change yourself, you have to organize your family, you have to manage your country so that you can change the world. We don't go to the world and change everything right away because we have to start from small steps. I think that we should create our own values, and in order to do that, we need cultural producers, people who are passionate and visionary, and we have to have like sacrifice. I think that's what I want to do because I think I can do it, and I think that it's meaningful. It makes my life meaningful and happy as well.
Thank you, December, for keeping me company today.
My pleasure, Alma, and thank you, too. And that's the latest news in the dynamic ASEAN region. I'm December Paras of PBC Indonesia Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back tomorrow. We live in interesting times.